What's going on, guys? Lance here. In this video I want to cover why I believe Game Freak has been avoiding Gen 4 in all their Pokemon media. So I believe that Gen 4 has kind of been they've been pushing it under the radar recently for various reasons that I'll cover later. But signs can be shown in all different forms, and I'll start with Pokemon Go. So Pokemon Go is kind of like this hype center for Pokemon, where obviously they like to push at their own updates and have their own fun in the game, like how they recently released they're going to do Mega Evolution. But they also use it as hype for other things like their main games, movies. They've used it all the time for even holidays, just to stir up more Pokemania. But with their yearly event Pokemon Go Fest, they have for the past years always featured a mythical Pokemon. In the first one, they released the Mew, next they released Celebi, then they released Jirachi, and you think next in line should be a Pokemon from the Sinnoh region, one of the three they haven't released, whether it be Shaman, Manaphy, or Arceus. But they didn't. They chose Victini over those, which breaks their cycle that they had, which is kind of weird. Now they've used Darkrai already for I think it was a Halloween event, and that makes sense, there's a lot of Sinnoh Mythicals, more than there were in Gen 3, so it's we can use them for different events. That still doesn't explain why they went to choose Shaman, which was a good candidate, or Manaphy. Obviously Arceus they'll probably do something else with, but it breaks that cycle. It should have been, next in line it should have been a Sinnoh, then next year it should have been a Unova. Which kind of makes me wonder, why would they do that? They also have only released Giratina Shiny. Now it seems like it's a little mundane thing, but they like to use Shinies in raids as a big draw-in for people to do more raids. When they release a Shiny, it gets all the Shiny collectors stirring up thinking, let's go do raids, let's spend money on passes. And what better time would that be to do that was when they're releasing a new Sinnoh game. So it all kind of ties around when they're going to release the Sinnoh game, because Gen 4 is due for a remake, and that's kind of the big leading factor on why I think they're kind of pulling back from using Sinnoh as their draw-in, is solely because they want to, once they release, Gen 4 remake, they want to just be able to hype it up. So releasing, as soon as they release it, they'd throw in the raids, Dialga and Palkia, Shiny variants released, and that would draw in a lot of people to Pokemon Go. It'd be a good outlet to stir up hype, get people hyped for Gen 4, and just all that. That's where I believe in Pokemon Go they've been kind of holding back a bit and just laying it easy with Sinnoh. Next on my list I want to talk about how they treated Galarian forms in Pokemon Sword and Shield. Now this time around they treated Galarian forms different than they did Alolan forms, in that they gave other Pokemon from different regions a chance to get forms. Obviously they still are their Kanto reps in Pokemon like Ponyta and Farfetch'd, but they also released Pokemon from other regions like Corsola from Johto, Zigzagoon from Hoenn. They skipped Sinnoh, had Unova reps in Darumaka. They did not have a Kalos rep and did not have an Alola rep, which is kind of understandable since those two are the most recent regions, which makes sense why they went through new forms. They don't need to bring that nostalgia back and hype people up for them. But still, they went to choose Unova over Sinnoh again, and this trend of picking Unova over Sinnoh continues. Now obviously I have nothing against Gen 5, I love a ton of Pokemon from it. Galarian Darumaka is my favorite regional variant, but it's still odd that they go straight to Unova over Sinnoh. It's a common skip. And there was a ton of Pokemon from Sinnoh that were in line to get regional variants, like Luxray, because its normal Sinnoh form is very underwhelming. It literally isn't fully evolved Pokemon in the lowest ranking tier. Also along the lines of Pokemon Sword and Shield kind of skewing Unova in its favor is with Gmax forms. Now not many people let this click in, but the only Gmax form that did not come from Kanto or Galar was again Unova, and it was Garbodor. That was the only Pokemon besides a Kanto or a Galar Pokemon that got a form. Now obviously that excludes all Hoenn Pokemon, Sinnoh Pokemon, Alola, and Kalos. Still, they're very clingy to Unova. Now, obviously, I don't know if that's them trying to make up for like all the hate Unova got when it first came out, but I feel like since then they've got a lot of positive feedback on it, so I don't know why they need to make up for it in this game. Another place where you can kind of see where they're playing it a little weird with Sinnoh is in the Crown Tundra. Through leaks and the information they've just given us, we know more about how Regigigas is going to be kind of themed in the Crown Tundra with his new like Regis in Regidraco and Regieleki. Now obviously that does give some Sinnoh representation, showing more lore on Regigigas and all that. Regigigas obviously has been shown in other regions, so it could just be another let's just show Regigigas off again. But that still could lead into some foreshadowing and hype for a Sinnoh remake. Because obviously if they do a Sinnoh remake, they're probably gonna put in Regigigas' new Regis and Regieleki and Regidraco into them. But also there's other things in the Crown Tundra. Through leaks and data mines, people have been able to find like what the dex is going to look like for the Crown Tundra. They've been able to trace kind of what slots are going to be filled in the Pokédex based off of what's not been scrubbed. And from that we found that they're going to bring back the Hoenn starters, and that is the only starter group they're bringing back. Obviously that's just a blatant, oh they didn't bring back Sinnoh, which could be because they don't want to bring back Sinnoh right before they throw a remake. They're working on the models for a remake instead of just showing it straight into the Sword and Shield. But also in that, they bring back every set of fossils from every generation. They bring back the Kanto fossils, they're going to bring back the Hoenn fossils, they're bringing back the Unovan fossils, and the Kalos fossils, but not Bastiojon and Rampardos, which is a weird, why would you just not add them in if you're adding all the fossils? It's one of those blatant, they're leaving out just enough to try to trick us off of, oh, they just didn't add them. To be like, oh, if they add them in Sinnoh, maybe they'll give them a new Mega Evolution or a new G-Max form, whatever they choose to do. So that we don't get burnt out on Rampardos and Bastion right away. Another point can be in the Pokemon they've added back into the game. When they released Pokemon Home, they added a small addition of 30 plus Pokemon into the game. These Pokemon were returning starters. They added Kanto and Alola, some legendaries, some mythicals. But the only two regions they did not add any Pokemon in from were Sinnoh and Kalos. I believe the reason for not adding Kalos Pokemon in was for the fact that the Kalos legendaries, there's only 3, and then there's the mythicals. Also, Kalos is not too old of a generation, it's only 2 generations old. Whereas Sinnoh, they have a lot more legendaries. I mean, they are bringing them back for the Crown Tundra, which is probably their initial plan, but I'm surprised they didn't patch in Heatran or Cresselia, since those are their 2 go-to, throw-in Pokemon. And as for the mythicals, they didn't add in even one of the minor mythicals like your Manaphy or your Shaman, which are kind of fit around their lines of Jirachi or Celebi. These additions seem very intentional, where they planned not to add any mythicals from Sinnoh, they planned not to add any legendaries until Crown Tundra, and this just seems a little weird. With all of this said, I believe that the reason they're doing this is probably preparing for a Gen 4 remake. It's obviously likely because with the timeline and usually releasing a game so far after its release in a certain session, and also when a new console comes out where it's dated about 2 or 1. It all leads to that. Also, with the Pokemon Present coming out on June 24th, they did say they wanted to release big news, and that could be a new Generation 4 remake or a Let's Go Johto game. Otherwise, other than that, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like and consider subscribing. Other than that, thanks for coming out.